Hello and welcome to Electric Moments. Fleet managers have perhaps never faced more diverse technologies or job pressures. But one concern we hear regularly is about cost. Switching to electric vehicles can help contribute towards a more sustainable fleet. But as they often have higher sticker prices than petrol or diesel equivalents, can they also cut costs? Well, the answer is yes, and in more areas than you might imagine. So today I'm joined by Jessica Chapman, who is Corporate Sales Director at LeasePlan UK, to explain where those savings might be found. So thanks for joining us, Jessica. Thank you. And I mean, where can a fleet save money by going electric?
Well, Robert, it's about looking deeper than just that sticker price of the vehicle. You know, in our industry, we like to look at the bigger picture. So for us, we like to consider the whole life cost of the vehicle. You might have heard of the term total cost of ownership, TCO.
Yeah.
We also like to think of total cost of usership. So that's the point where the vehicle's delivered to a customer to the point it's collected at the end. And we see electric vehicles perform really well against their whole life costs. So depending on variables such as the usage and where they're charging, often electric vehicles, when you compare them against their whole life costs, will perform better than a petrol or diesel equivalent.
Now, of course, one aspect is company car tax. Now, we've mentioned tax reforms for low emission vehicles in previous episodes, but are there long-term benefits in this area?
Yes, absolutely. With the 2% company car tax rate fixed until April 2025, that gives us that longer term assurance. And that's compared to 25% for even the most efficient petrol and diesel model. So that delivers savings for both drivers and, of course, for operators too. If we were to take the Polestar 2, for example, a 40% taxpayer would be paying £335 per year in benefit in kind tax. And that's against a whopping £4,511 for a BMW 320d. Employers also benefit, don't forget, with lower Class 1A national insurance contributions. If we were to look at those numbers, that's 126 for the Polestar versus 1,697 for the BMW. And don't forget, there's all those other benefits, all of the other costs, the VED, the congestion zone, ultra-low emissions, and clean air zones springing up across the place. Electric vehicles avoid all of these costs too.
Now, what about other running costs? Because electric vehicles, you know, they definitely avoid some of the complexities of internal combustion engines. Is the servicing cheaper as well?
Yeah, one of the joys of an electric powertrain is there's only a handful of moving parts. So there's no oil, no spark plugs, no filters. I remember getting my Polestar actually and lifting up the bonnet, and all I had to do was top up with windscreen fluid. Even I could do that. So there's no engine, so there's no clutch, there's no exhaust, no after additives. Do you remember AdBlue?
Yeah.
And of course, with the regen braking, you're using the motor rather than your brake pads, so it saves wear and tear on those. With the vehicle being maintained so easily, it means they're also off-road for much less time. And we can see that maintenance costs can be saved by up to 10 to 15% when you switch to electric.
But then what about fuel? I mean, is electricity still cheaper than petrol or diesel?
Well, that's a crucial question, isn't it, when we're all facing the energy price hikes that we're all seeing? But the answer is yes. So if we were to look at an example, and if we were to use the HMRC advisory fuel rates, looking at a diesel, it's 51.3 miles per gallon for a diesel and 44.9 for the equivalent petrol. And if we were to use the AA latest pump prices, a 100-mile journey would cost around £17 for the diesel and £19 for the petrol. A similar EV would cost around £5 if it was charged at home on an average tariff. But even if a driver is on a high peak off-gem price cap rate, 100 miles is going to cost around £7 of electricity. That's still less than half the cost.
So we've talked a lot about cars, but do those savings also apply to commercial vehicles?
Absolutely. And now is the time to start looking at your commercial vehicles. We're seeing manufacturers bringing more products to market at a faster pace, delivered by that demand from customers, seeing efficiencies of scale with production, delivering lower upfront costs and faster charging times. And the maths is really starting to work out. So most electric vans can do 100 to 200 miles on a single charge. So while 50% of all LCVs travel less than 62 miles a day, that range is perfectly adequate for many LCV operators. And also you don't lose any load space either. So everything I said earlier about cars is exactly the same for commercial vehicles. They can benefit from all of the cost savings, lower fuel, lower benefit in kind duty if drivers use their vehicles for private use. And we know our commercial vehicles are some of the hardest working vehicles on our fleet, so minimising downtime is really important to those customers. It's vital we keep them on the road as much as we possibly can. It's all about that whole life cost. And when vehicles can be charging whilst they're having downtime, operators are really maximising that time, and you really do see the whole life cost stack up for these vehicles.
So thanks, Jess, and we'll shortly take a look at how leasing can make all this easier. But before we do, we've spoken with someone who is familiar with driving an EV and is helping others to make the transition.
I'm an independent EV consultant and trainer, so I help businesses and their drivers get comfortable with getting into electric cars. How long have I been driving electric? I've been driving electric for nearly 4 years now, talking about them with customers for nearly 8. And since the start of this year, I've actually now gone double electric, so both my cars are electric now. The initial step should really be to seek out help and support from those who've done this before and helped others do this before. I would then encourage a fleet manager to engage with stakeholders internally, whether that's finance or HR or tax or sustainability or unions. Certainly engage with the drivers to tease out their concerns, understand the daily journey patterns of these drivers to see who could move electric now based on the journeys that they do, who could charge at home, who may need to wait because they've got 3 years left on their contract. So you understand then who could move straight away, who may need to wait a bit. But this is about getting the right person in the right car at the right time, not necessarily about knee-jerking everybody into electric now, but it's also not about waiting until 5, 6, 7 years' time to jump on the transition. Whole life cost, it's a way of measuring all of the costs that you would incur by putting a car on the road. So it's an alternative to just looking at rental or purchase price, because rental or purchase price is just one part of the whole life cost jigsaw. There are other things you will spend money on by putting a car on the road. You will have to maintain the car, you will have to insure the car, you will have to pay tax as a company car driver, and if you're the fleet manager, you'll have to pay national insurance on that tax. You will have to put fuel in the car, electricity or petrol. So all of these costs are incurred, and it's really important, certainly with an electric vehicle, but with any comparison of car versus car, to compare all of the associated costs. The reason it's so important for electric cars is that the higher purchase price or lease rental on an electric car might put some people off. But when you start to look at some of the other component parts of whole life cost, specifically fuel, specifically maintenance, specifically the fact that EVs have no vehicle excise duty, when you start to look at everything together, EVs start to look cheaper in whole life cost terms than petrol cars. And if you're not looking at whole life cost, you're potentially missing that opportunity to save both money and carbon. It's fair to say that the EV is more expensive to buy or lease than the equivalent petrol or diesel model, but they're cheaper to run. So where we come across finance directors who say, yes, I'd love to take my fleet electric, but they're too expensive, there's an education piece to be done there, and that is to help the fleet manager or the finance director understand the importance of whole life cost, because we can identify real financial savings for them, real environmental savings for them by helping them unlock whole life cost. It really is the key to the savings, is looking at whole life cost. Until EVs cost the same to buy or lease as petrol vehicles, whole life cost is crucial in helping a fleet make the transition to electric. What advice would I give a fleet manager? I'd tell a fleet manager to ask people who've been there before they have. Ask for support. If you are trying to do something and you don't know how to do it, you'll typically ask someone who's done it before. And that's where support from LeasePlan would come in and help this. It really is important to get the advice from people who've done it before. And then I'd say, break it down into bite-sized chunks. You don't have to do it all right now. I'd get on the journey straight away. The best time to do it is yesterday, and if you haven't done it already, then the best time is today. But that's to start the journey, and then I would take it in bite-sized chunks and ask for support along the way. The people out there that can support you will do a lot of this heavy lifting for you. Any fleet can and should look into the transition towards electric, and don't think just because you've got 1 or 2 cars you're on your own and you've got to do it yourself. There are an awful lot of support facilities and functions out there that can give you the advice and tools and answers to questions that you need. So I would say yes, if you've got 1 or 2 cars, not only can you, but you should, and you should get on board straight away. The other reason to do that is the quicker you do it, the quicker you will start to take advantage, whether it's financial advantage or environmental advantage. And if you need to install workplace charging infrastructure, if you get in early, there are still grants available for it now for workplace charging, and also some of the available power in your area, you could use it before your business neighbour gets to it. So I would say yes, even fleets of 1 should be thinking about this now. It's key to have a partner like LeasePlan to take you through the process because they've done it so many times before. They have so many tools available to help fleets of any size. If you think that just because you've got 1, 2, 5, 10 cars, there's no support available for you, then think again, because LeasePlan have an EV readiness tool, which is really, really useful, free consultancy to take you through all of the areas you think you need to cover, a lot of the areas you didn't even know you needed to cover, but it can help you get on your journey. Yes, of course, if you've got much more cars, there is different kinds of consultancy available, but even for a fleet of 1, there is support available from LeasePlan through the EV readiness tool. The initial steps a fleet manager should take in transitioning to electric is actually to embrace it and start to look at the opportunities to get on board rather than see it as a challenge or daunting in any way.
So then how can leasing make this easier, and why should fleets consider this?
Well, I know I'm biased. I work for a company called LeasePlan, but what I'm about to say is also actually true. Leasing companies can bring lots of expertise to the transition to electric vehicles. So we've done it for our employees and we've done it for hundreds of our customers, both in the UK and also internationally. And it starts really with having a feasibility and understanding that consultancy piece of the existing fleet and building you a roadmap on how you can transition successfully. You can also benefit from the purchasing power of your leasing company. And in this day and age, it's not just the discounts that you can get on the vehicle, but it's also access to stock that leasing companies might buy in advance. And of course, all the financial risks, the capital outlay, the depreciation on the vehicle, and even the maintenance on the vehicle. The leasing company takes all of that risk. And of course, there's the flexibility. Customers want to transition, but they want to transition at the right time. So leasing companies can offer flexibility around transition programs, about swapping vehicles out every 2, 3, 4 years, however customers want to take advantage of the emerging technology. Also things like try before you buy, so short-term rental on electric vehicles, letting you choose the right vehicle for your needs, for your organisation. And of course, if you want, all of the maintenance and even the charging can be built into the contract.
Oh, well, that's like a one-stop shop then.
Absolutely. I know I'm sounding a bit sales pitchy, so I'm really sorry for that. But actually, fundamentally, what I'm saying is that leasing gives you peace of mind, and that's what customers need right now.
Well, that's all from us for this episode, and indeed the second series of Electric Moments. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to Jess and all the team at LeasePlan who've helped us create these episodes, and our fantastic guests who've shared their personal insights on EV ownership, and of course you, our amazing audience. We hope you've really enjoyed the series, and as always, if you have been, thank you for watching.